Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, not too long ago, I built a deck with 99 lands and a commander, and many of you seem to enjoy that. And yeah, the deck actually functions and can definitely win games. So I thought, is the exact opposite of that true? Could I build a deck with literally no lands in it and still win games? So as you obviously saw from the title as well as the thumbnail, yeah, that's exactly what I did. I built a deck with exactly 0 lands in it. And it can win in a pretty exciting way. Now, before I jump into this episode, a huge thank you to both Eddie and Alec for inspiring the idea for this deck. And while both Eddie and Alec have different lists for their own 0 lands deck, mine has a slightly different focus. So how in the world does this deck work? What does it want to do? And who in the world is the commander? Well, let's jump into it to find out. So the commander that I chose for this deck was Garth One-Eye, and I'll explain exactly why I chose Garth, but also because I chose Garth, I am now calling this deck Garth 0 Lands, because, you get it, One-Eye, 0 lands, no, clever? Okay. Regardless, I needed a 5-color commander for this deck to work because, well, you'll see here in a second, but I need access to all 5 colors to even have a chance to make a 0 land deck work. And on top of that, Garth is a fantastic toolbox commander that can help us out in a lot of situations and can help us with a key piece of this deck as well. Garth is a 5/5 human wizard for Wooburg that has tapped. Choose a card that has been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus. Create a copy of the card with the chosen name. You may cast the copy, you still pay its cost. So again, Garth is a toolbox commander, giving you access to a lot of really old and really effective cards, like Disenchant, which destroys an artifact or enchantment, Brain Geyser, which can draw you a lot of cards, Terror can destroy a non-black creature, Shivan Dragon is a dragon, Regrowth, which can get you a card back from your graveyard, and Black Lotus, which, well, is Black Lotus, it gives you mana. The most important of these for this deck's purposes, though, is probably Regrowth, because this deck is actually built around one very specific card that we'll get to here in a bit. Regardless, although Regrowth is probably the most important card, again, cards like Disenchant, Brain Geyser, and Terror, and yeah, of course, Black Lotus can really help us out. And I guess Shivan Dragon if you're really desperate. Regardless, how in the world do we make a 0 land deck work? Well, the answer to that is, of course, MDFCs, which of course stands for Modal Double Face Cards. There are exactly 30 cards in Magic where you've got on the front side an instant, a sorcery, or a creature, and on the back side, you've got a land. Now, the lands on the back side do come into play tapped, and there are only a very few that have the option of even coming into play untapped, though it will cost you 3 life. But still, these cards do exist, and they technically are not lands, because again, the front side is what determines what they are for certain effects. And we'll get to exactly again why that is relevant in the card that this deck is built around, again here in a bit. Really quick, because these MDFCs were absolutely necessary for this deck, they are budget exceptions. Basically, yes, there are some MDFCs that are more than $1 and some that are quite a bit more than $1, but every single other card in this deck outside of the commander is less than $1. Regardless, with all of our lands being flexible spells, well, for one thing, we're never going to be mana flooded with this deck. We always have options on what to do. Now, like I said before, there are 30 of these MDFCs like Malakir Rebirth, Changleflora Hedron, and Glasspool Mimic, and I'm just going to highlight a few of the important ones. Malakir Rebirth says choose target creature you lose to life until end of turn that creature gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield, tapped under its owner's control. Basically, this is a fantastic way to protect any of our creatures. Tangleflora Hedron is a mana dork, so yay, it taps for green. And then Glasspool Mimic is basically a clone for any creature we control. Next up, we've got cards like Slendy Vision, Valakut Awakening, and Balged Recovery, which can help us with card advantage. Slundy Vision says, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it in your hand, and put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Valakut Awakening says, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. And then Valakut Recovery is basically a regrowth for 1 more mana, and again, our commander also gives us regrowth, which I did mention was important, and again, we'll get to that here in a bit. Regardless, next up there's Tajiri Shelter, which says, target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn, so yet another way to protect one of our creatures. And then Colony Ambush says, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and yeah, although we're not going to be doing a lot of attacking with Garth most likely, Garth still does have 5 power and 5 toughness, so we can take out a good amount of creatures with this. And speaking of taking out creatures, Hagra Mauling is always going to be fun, well at least for us. It says this spell costs 1 to cast if an opponent controls no basic lands, destroy target creature. And if we really need to hit the panic button, of course we've got Onto Inversion. This one just straight up says destroy all non-land permanents, so yeah, get rid of everything. And then Shatterskull Smasher can also help us take out some key pieces as well. It can deal X damage divided as we choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. And on top of that, if X is 6 or more, it's going to deal twice X damage divided as we choose among them instead. And then Seagate Restoration is a fantastic draw spell for this deck. It says draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1. You've got no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. And like I mentioned before, again, we've got 30 MDFCs in total, and I'm not going to highlight every single one of them because some of them, well, aren't really all that great on the front side, but again, that's okay. The flexibility is what matters for these, and the fact that they aren't technically a land. So, of course, we're also running Ameria's Call, Kabira Takedown, McKinney Stampede, Skyclave Cleric, Bayan Veil, Jawari Disruption, Umara Wizard, Agadeem's Awakening, and Black Bloom Rogue. Yeah, there's a lot of names there. And speaking of a lot of names, the last 9. Here we go. Palaka Predation, Zoth Consumption, Akum Warrior, Kazul's Fury, Songmat Treachery, Spikefield Hazard, Kazandu Mammoth, Turn Timber Symbiosis. Oh, I tripped up on that one. Vastwood Fortification. Okay, now that I'm completely exhausted and we've talked about all 30 MDFCs, which again are lands on the back but not on the front, why in the world do we care that none of our cards in this deck are lands? Well, that's because of the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the number 1 card in our 99 in the deck that this entire deck is built around. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Goblin Char Belcher. Goblin Char Belcher is an artifact that costs 4, and it's got a very unique ability. By paying 3, we tap it to reveal cards in the top of our library until we reveal a land card. Then Goblin Char Belcher is going to deal damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to target creature or player. And if the revealed card was a mountain, which again we don't have in this deck, Goblin Char Belcher deals double that damage instead. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. So, yeah. We aren't running any lands in this deck at all. Again, we can play MDFCs as a land, but Goblin Char Belcher, when we activate that and reveal cards in the top of our library, isn't going to see any lands because those MDFCs are, well, whatever's on the front. So essentially, for this deck's purposes, this card is, hey, pay 3 mana, tap it, and deal damage equal to the number of cards in your library to target creature or player. Basically, pay 3 mana, take out target player. Oh yeah, and on top of that, rearrange your library however you would like. Literally put every single card back in your library in the order that you want. Yeah, that kind of payoff is well worth it for not running any lands at all. Now, yes, there are other things that we could have built around in this deck. I'm personally not a fan of Labman Wins, and there are cards that, well, could have just milled ourselves because we have no lands in our deck. But this deck's not about those cards again because I just personally don't like Labman Wins for whatever reason, okay? Whereas Goblin Char Belcher winning is fun and flavorful and very powerful again because even after we take that one player out, we're rearranging our entire library so we get whatever else we want off the top. And of course, there are ways to then just draw a card so that we can get the exact card that we want right after we do this so that we can then, well, do it again, and we win. So yeah, there's a reason why Goblin Char Belcher is the golden pig of this deck. Again, this entire deck is built around it. And because of that, we're going to need some tutors to actually get to this card, with things like Dimir Houseguard and Clutch of the Undercity being some fantastic ones. Each of them can transmute to go get it. Basically, we pay the transmute cost, then we discard the card and search our library for a card with the same converted mana cost, which again would be 4 for these. So yeah, we go get the Char Belcher and we set ourselves up to win. Of course, we can also use some more standard tutors like Diabolic Tutor and Razcast Right, which each just go get us a card, and Razcast Right can cycle for a black. And of course, we can utilize tutors like Increasing Ambition and Behold the Beyond to get multiple things. Increasing Ambition is going to get us 1 card at first, and if we flash it back, it's going to get us 2. And then Behold the Beyond is going to make us discard our card, but then we get 3 cards directly into our hand. And then Mythos of Brokos is actually a tutor that can help us out in multiple ways. It says if blue-black was spent to cast this spell, search your library for a card, put that card in your graveyard, then shuffle your library, return up to 2 permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, if Goblin Charbelcher is dealt with, we can get it back, or we can just tutor for it, put it in our graveyard, and get it right back to our hand with something else. Regardless, we also have some other fantastic cards that can really help us out with our plan. And two that I want to especially highlight are Arkelos Lagoon Mystic and Tawnos Urza's Apprentice. Arkelos says, as long as it's tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped. If it's untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. Again, each and every single one of our MDFC lands is going to come into play tapped, but Arkelos can essentially say, you know what? No, they don't. They come to play untapped, so they're basically just like regular lands. This can really speed us up, which again is ironic since Arkelos is a turtle. And on top of that, of course, this can slow our opponents down as well if need be. And then Tawnos Urza's Apprentice has haste and pay blue-red, tap, copy target, activated or triggered ability you control from an artifact source. You may choose new targets for the copy. So yeah, why Tawnos is in this deck is very simple. We can copy the Goblin Charbelcher activation and take out another player. And speaking of taking out multiple players, of course we've got more than one way to do that, because we also have some other untappers with Cura's Follower, Vizier Tumbling Sands, and Kelpie Guide. Each of them can very simply tap to untap another target permanent. So obviously these work fantastically with Goblin Charbelcher, and it's also another reason that I chose Garth for this deck, because again, Garth has a tap ability that can be quite powerful. So while we're setting up to actually get the Charbelcher out, we can utilize Garth multiple times in a turn with this. And of course, we also have Clever Conjurer, Tidewater Minion, and Unbender Time, which can also help us untap a permanent. Next up, we can untap all of our non-land permanents with Dramatic Reversal, which again is an incredible effect, especially in combination with Garth's Regrowth. We can utilize this to untap the Goblin Charbelcher, all of our mana rocks, and yeah, Garth, and then we can just regrowth, get it back, and then do it again. Or we could just utilize something like Clock of Omens to tap some of our mana rocks to untap Goblin Charbelcher. It has tap to untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifact. So again, getting multiple activations in a single turn can be huge with Goblin Charbelcher, and yeah, we can take all of our opponents out on the same turn. And speaking of mana rocks, we're going to be utilizing a ton of them because again, this deck only literally can run 30 quote-unquote lands with those MDFCs because there are only 30 of those in existence. So we're going to be running every single budget signet with Izzet, Orzhov, Simic, Boros, Azorius, and Gruul. And also, we're going to be doing the exact same thing with the Talismans. Unfortunately, there's only 3 that are still budget with Talisman of Creativity, Resilience, and Unity. Regardless, again, we want these low-to-the-ground mana rocks, and we want a ton of them. So we're also going to be utilizing Pyramid of the Pantheon, Mindstone, Ornithopter of Paradise, Prismatic Lens, Commander Sphere, Mangio, the Celestis, Firemind Vessel, and Empowered Auto Generator. Yeah, if you were counting, that is 18 mana rocks in total. Well, okay, I guess technically Ornithopter of Paradise is a mana dork, but still, RAM sources, okay? Keep in mind, yeah, this deck might be 5 colors and we've got access to green, but yeah, we can't exactly utilize Rampant Growth because we have no basic lands to go get. Regardless, we've got a few other tricks up our sleeve in this deck. And one of those fun things that we can do is utilize blink cards like Cloud Shift and Momentary Blink with Garth. Essentially, these are going to exile target creature we control to return that card back to the battlefield under our control. So that's actually a great way to reset Garth and get access to all of his cards again. Because again, if we already use Garth to actually cast Black Lotus, then we can't do that again until Garth either dies and we recast it, or we blink it or get it back to our hand. Regardless, we just need Garth to come back into play. We also have 2 other blink spells that can help us out in multiple ways, though, with Teferi's Time Twist and Ghostly Flicker. Teferi's Time Twist can blink target permanent we control, and Ghostly Flicker is going to blink 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands we control. So not only can these help us out with Garth, but they can also help us out actually with Goblin Charbelcher. If we don't have a way to untap it, we can just blink it, and then it's going to come back into play untapped, and we can activate it again. And of course, although Garth does already give us access to Regrowth, we definitely want more Regrowth effects, like Regrowth. Both Regrowth and Treasured Find are going to return target card from our graveyard to our hand, which again is very important because again, this deck revolves around Goblin Charbelcher, and if it gets dealt with, well, we want a way to get it back. So we're also going to be utilizing Naya Charm, Reconstruct History, and Wildest Dreams. Naya Charm says choose once, can deal 3 damage to target creature, return target card from a graveyard to its owner's hand, or tap all creatures target player controls. And then Reconstruct History does a lot of things, so here we go. It can return up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target enchantment, up to 1 target instant, up to 1 target sorcery, and up to 1 target planeswalker card from our graveyard to our hand, then it exiles. And speaking of getting multiple things back, Wildest Dreams has pay X and a green, return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand, exile Wildest Dreams. So yeah, these can help us get back multiple things that can really help us out. And outside of Garth's Brainstorm, of course, we've got other card advantage spells like Read the Bones, Chemist's Insight, Hieroglyphic Illumination, Painful Truths, Faithless Looting, Fact or Fiction, Read the Bones, Behold the Multiverse, Reign of Revelation, Precognitive Perception, and Epiphany at the Drowned Yard. So yeah, again, alongside Garth's Brain Geyser, ways to dig down into our deck to either get to a tutor or to Goblin Char Belcher itself. And of course, we've got some counterspells to help us protect our plan with things like Negate, Unwind, and Neutralize. Negate and Unwind are both going to counter target non-creature spell, and Unwind's going to untap up to 3 lands, and Neutralize just straight up counters any spell, or we can cycle it for 2. Next up, we've got some ways to throw a wrench into our opponent's planes with things like Depart the Realm, Despark, Rip Apart, Mythos of Nethroi, Crust Contraband, Neverall's Disc, Aether Gale, Slash the Ranks, Time Wipe, and Akroma's Vengeance. So if we need targeted removal for something, or if we need to just completely wipe the board, we've got ways to do both. Regardless, now that we've talked about literally every single card in this deck, let's talk about the price. Again, like I mentioned before, outside of the Commander and the MDFCs, every single card in this deck is less than $1. But yeah, some of those MDFC lands are, well, quite expensive. I mean, literally 2 of them, just with their prices together, make up about 1/4 of the total cost of this deck. Regardless, the vast majority of this deck is made up of very inexpensive cards, and yeah, even though it's got some expensive MDFCs in it, the total cost of the deck is $86.73. And again, can you really put a price on the look that your opponents are going to have on their faces when you, well, just activate Goblin Char Belcher and reveal your entire deck and take one of them out, then reorder your deck however you would like, and then take out the rest of them? Regardless, keep in mind that you can actually get this cost down even further by utilizing TCG Player and buying some heavily played and damaged cards, because again, those cards need a home too. And also keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.